Welcome back to The Big Picture. I'm Judge Penny Wolfgang, and I'm joined by the Dean of the UB School of Law, Aviva Abramovsky. And we have been talking, of course, about the effect and the monumental life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, our Supreme Court judge. And of course, the question on everybody's mind, and I think Aviva is a perfect person to answer this, do you think it matters if the replacement is a woman? Do you think it's going to make a difference? Do you think it should be? Do you think it should be on the basis of sex, for example, the appointment? Or should it be just on the basis of merit, man, woman, or man or woman? What do you think?
So I think what matters is the way in which we have the question. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked this question herself, she said, on how many women Supreme Court justices were enough, she said 9. And her answer may not have been literal, but what it was a figurative prompt for us to ask ourselves, why is the concept of having 9 women Supreme Court justices so radical when, as a society, we'd had 400 years of 9 male Supreme Court, 200 years in the United States, but hundreds of years of having all male justices. So that's really what's to me, more important in that question. Is why is it a difficult one for us to have a conversation about? The practical matters, of course, that the judiciary has to be chosen for their reason, ethics, background, and all of those other types of things. But what I thought inspired me the most in her response is that no matter what question was posed to her, she made us think about why does the concept cause discomfort? And that, I think, is the question we should be asking.
You're at the law school, and the kids are back in school. I said kids, students are back in school. But it was a challenge, I'm sure, to figure out how to get back, as it is with all the schools, as it has been. But with the attorneys, with the future attorneys of America, what was the challenge? How did you meet the COVID challenge, and how is it being managed?
I'm incredibly proud of the university's leadership in this area. I think that the university has a good plan, and we're following that. And I am confident that we are providing the highest quality education to our students in this difficult time.
And is there in-person training, or are they online, or remote, or hybrid, or how are they doing it? How are they studying?
The law school is currently hybrid, which means that we have a different array of both in-person or partially in-person classes and online and fully online classes. So what is most interesting in this situation is how quickly everyone has been able to adapt to the new technology and the resilience of our students in learning this new technology and being able to interact through it. I'm very, very proud of them.
I'm so glad I'm not in law school now. I'm like in the old days when you'd sit in a big lecture hall and there'd be, I guess, 300. As a matter of fact, when I went to the University of Michigan Law School for my first year of law school, there were 300 students and there were 4 women. So I could add that to our stories about. And they had a dormitory, but it was only for men. So the 4 of us had to be in a graduate dorm, which was miles and miles away, and it was cold. But now I ended up living in Buffalo. I wanted to go back to something about insurance law. You know, when you were talking before about insurance claims and how you had specialized in this, your specialty is going to really be in the forefront of the economy now. Everyone is talking about what is going to happen with the insurance claims and how are they going to be handled for businesses and people due to COVID. You probably know the answer.
Yes. Well, the answer is still to be determined by the courts, but there is a huge amount of very serious decisions that have to be made on the application of business interruption insurance, whether or not companies, particularly restaurants and hotels, will be able to recoup from their policies for this interruption that was caused both either directly by the virus or by government action in response to the virus. And then there are other areas of law. There's a fancy term called force majeure, which basically is the idea of a powerful outside force that voids contracts. So is that applicable to this situation? There's a phrase in law that I'm sure you're familiar with, which is, the act of God idea, that some things are so beyond the scope right, of reasonable expectations that they should influence the way in which the contract is interpreted. So there's a lot of different issues that are happening both with insurance contracts, but contracts generally, that have to be interpreted as a result of these very different, very challenging times.
Now, this would be interesting because I don't know how far it's going to get, but these issues might even get to the Supreme Court. And as they roll along, as they terminate, and as a person, asks for the insurance coverage and is rejected and so forth, and starts in the lower courts, it may end up. So it may matter. It will matter in many ways who the next Supreme Court judge is going to be in that regard.
I would hope that all of the Supreme Court will address the issues of insurance coverage with character, intelligence, and a certain amount of compassion for the circumstances.
And it is going to be novel, as you pointed out. These are going to be novel issues.
Yes, of course. I mean, the issue with COVID is not necessarily so much that there's never been a virus before, a respiratory virus that affected people. We've had flu and other colds and things like that. But the interplay between the responses from different jurisdictions and how they've been addressing this really is very novel. And the way in which it interacted with the capacities of businesses to operate is new. So those are, for insurance coverage, those are going to be questions that have to be answered. And we might get different states coming to different determinations, which could lead to it moving up the appellate ladder, indeed.
I know, I was just reading about the interruption of business aspect and how it used to apply when a business had a fire or something happened physically. And I was just hearing that, well, maybe this will be interpreted, the insurance will be interpreted that, as you just pointed out, it would apply to these situations as well, since people could not continue their business because of the pandemic.
That's exactly the question that's going to be before the courts. So an insurance policy is a contract, and they have to be interpreted as they're written, and different policyholders will have different contracts, and different states will have slightly different rules into the nature of their interpretation. And of course, each of them will have slightly different factual circumstances. So I think that we're going to see a series of really interesting decisions coming out in this field over time. And of course, what will happen is probably it will change the market, that corporate America will probably want to think to itself in the future, maybe I should find different ways to insure against these types of losses more prudently in the future.
It's going to have a big impact on the economy, that's for sure. Whatever happens, it has already had a big impact on the economy, no matter what happens. So that's going to be something we have to think about. I just wanted to ask you, my sister, who doesn't live here and who is obsessed, and who is not a lawyer, asked me to find out if there can be if there's a law that says how many justices there can be on the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. As far as I'm aware, there is no limitation in the Constitution.
Because that's an issue that's been coming up and people have been asking, and I don't know the answer. So there is no limit as far as you know.
As far as I'm aware, there isn't, but it's not my area of expertise. You might want to bring in one of our con law experts from UB.
We'll have to, or we'll have to go. We'll have to go to a constitutional law expert, like you said, from the law school. Okay, so. What do you think will be the legacy of Justice Ginsburg? How will she be remembered, Aviva?
I think her legacy is going to be of a woman who embodied in her own life and in her own work, making our society more equal for all. That she believed in this country. She was an optimist that change could happen incrementally through the courts, and that through her hard work that she could also be a part of that change. So I think her legacy is going to be one of optimism, hope, and the belief in the rule of law.
Which is a marvelous way of stating it and a marvelous statement. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. We were honored to have you join us today. Thank you, Aviva Abramovsky, Dean of the UB School of Law, for talking about what's happening at UB and remembering the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm Penny Wolfgang. Thanks for watching The Big Picture, and thanks for watching WBBZ-TV.